In this round, when we drew lot to see who would go first, etc., we went back to the original plan. We went from the first time around indigenous, non-indigenous, indigenous, non-indigenous. That was the first round because life at one time was balanced until the great imbalance was introduced. The second round, we threw everybody's name in one hat and let the creator, hi Nellie, and so some of them were clustered. And it told the story of how were we working through this new relationship. And we ended up knowing that there is hope, and that the hope is that we can listen to each other and learn and share. And then everything else in between are challenges. This round, we went back to the balanced approach, and we began this time with the Anishinaabe artist to project or imagine what it is we need to do now in Simcoe County. And so, due to COVID, we did have a chance to go into a sweat together, but we did not have a chance to in-person handoff. However, the first person this time was Albert Snake. And Albert is on break. Albert Snake. Oh, there he is. Didn't see you back there, Albert. Okay. Albert is new to the process. We've had 22 artists now in this process, and we have produced 50 images. So Albert is the courageous first to set the tone for what does reconciliation in Simcoe County look like and sound like through his imagination.
Honey, and I'm Albert. Nice to meet you all. So with my piece, I kind of pictured a belt or buckle that represents our standing ground in which we walk and the challenges we face with reconciliation. Furthermore, the turtle shell represents our true calendar. The bear walking is to show that no matter what we face, to keep going, and the antlers to show forward or backwards, we will still feel trapped in our fight to overcome reconciliation. The animal prints are the hieroglyphs of our ancestors, and what they endured and persevered so we could walk this Mother Earth, that no matter what we encounter, we will still have our traditions and roots. To grow the teepee inside the bear to resemble our fasting, and to not forget to reconnect with nature. And the ancestors are shown smudging to depict that we are never alone. Miigwech.
Wow. Yes. So Albert passed this incredible work off to Jeanette Lucchese. And Jeanette's work is up here. So Ted and I are going to pull this easel over just a little bit, I hope. Or can we? I don't think that you can see it over there. Okay, we need to bring hers down then. Can we do that? Yeah. Let's bring that up on top of the Ted. That's what happens when you put the eagle feather too close to the mic. Too weird. Want to bring it down? In
hear me if I just speak? Use the microphone? Use the microphone? Okay. So, on the way here today, I was wondering, because I know Mary said that, just a brief conversation about your piece, and I was thinking about it, and I thought, I'm not quite sure if just talking about this one piece was going to be, give anybody really a picture of what this project meant to me. So I thought that just briefly I would let you take you along the journey that I embarked on, and I guess I don't need this, that I embarked on in being invited to do this, and hopefully it's not going to be too long. So it was 2015 when I met Mary Lou, and she had asked me if I'd participate, and I thought this was a fabulous, fabulous opportunity to learn more. As I mentioned, my name is Jeanette Lucchese, but I've been Jeanette Lucchese for a lot of years because the other was just too, European, not the norm to say. And then couple that with the fact that I'm a partner in a multiracial marriage. With a son, my husband is black and my son identifies as black. I have an understanding of prejudice, and I have a understanding of fear, and I have an understanding of deception. So, I thought this was a wonderful opportunity to figure out how to help. So I started to read and read everything that I could, much like, the other artists, and, armed myself to really better understand. I took an Aboriginal class just to get a further understanding, and that I spent, and at Georgian, and I spent the nights driving home crying for what it shared with me. But I persevered, and on I went, and we began with Nathalie. For me, I began with Nathalie. She brought the strawberry, and that was the piece that I responded to. And she was just so wonderful in sharing with me that the strawberry was a heartberry, and to her, all the little seeds in the strawberry were spirits. And I think, that's how it became a symbol of our project, was just that heartful rendition that she shared with us of her creation. And then understanding, the spirit of that piece, and further, looking for, where I would start with for my piece, the more I tried to learn, the angrier I got. And what transpired was I actually had a recollection. I was triggered. A memory was triggered. And my memory was I actually ran away to Orillia when I was 18 years old. So it actually has a special meaning for me, I always call it sort of home. Anyways, when I had a friend who was showing me around, and they said, oh, he wanted to go see his dad, and he wanted to go, and it was in Rama, and I went, yeah, great, you want to see Rama? And I said, okay, great. So we traveled through Rama, and I kept looking at these little houses, and some were pink, some were blue, and they were little, and we were going on through, and I said, where's your dad live? And he said, well, he was over there, and I got there, and it was a big house, much bigger than the ones I saw on the route through Rama. And I said, that's interesting. And he introduced me to his dad as the Indian agent. So with that recollection, well, let me first share. I asked them, how come all the houses were this odd colors, right? I'd never been to the East Coast, so I never really realized that the people at the East Coast do that too. They have really colorful houses. But what he told me was it was a surplus paint that was given to the indigenous people, and that's what they painted their house with. So I was even, with that recollection, I kind of figured it was destiny for me to be part of this, to learn more, share more, and speak more. And I think in me realizing that, I decided I would speak what I felt, and some of it's uncomfortable. I can remember with the first piece that I had created. There was so much anger, but the thing that was saving grace was with understanding everything that happened to the indigenous people, I came to the realization that they were so resilient. They are, you know, a people that we really do have to take a look at this incredible life that they have for living and how they continually just surpass everything. You know, the reality that, at first there was first contact and everything was not so bad, and then, you know, the minute the British and the Canadian government realized that there was so much here that was, that was worth so much, all the resources, then everything got turned to annihilation. They tried to annihilate a people because that was the easiest way to claim the resources. And these are the realities, the people that want to try to help, these are the realities that really have to be faced. My second piece was one that I called Fragile and Fractured. It was at a time when I was learning about the different things that were going on that were, you know, more close to home. There was the issues, the time of Colton Boushie. Here is a young boy that broke down with friends, got out of his car, went to a first place to, you know, get some help, and he was shot. And then the worst case scenario, the person did not even get charged. Well, he got charged, but got let go. And then Tina Fey, a child that was in care with the government. Tina Fontaine, I'm sorry, help me. Did I make a mistake? Pardon? They're pointing to something. Oh, okay. So that ended up, she was supposed to be taken care of, and she got, I don't know, taken, she was lost. She ran away, I don't know, but she ended up dead. So taking a look at that, you know, the piece was called Fractured and Fragile because I had to take a look at the fact that the system that I thought was here to protect us wasn't here to protect us. Wasn't here to protect those that really needed to be protected. The reality that we really do have to look at as settlers, have to look at what's happening in our day-to-day life to be able to be good allies and to be able to speak up. It's actually quite tragic because it's, you know, we're still Canada the good. Everybody wants to see Canada as someone good, that's, you know, this wonderful, wonderful place. And the tragedy is that, you know, a lot of times the people only acknowledge what went on before, and everything is still happening. I don't know at one point in time if an Indigenous child went to healthcare to need special requirements for their health. They were put on, because of the process that they have to go through, they're not given instant care like my child would have, and some children have died waiting for care. These are the things that we have to understand. These are the things we have to help change. Things that they're not really in the paper every day, but that we have to dig through and find. So I came to my third piece, and it was wonderful. I had a chance to talk to Albert Snake and about his piece, you know, and he shared with me what he shared with you about it, and what I recalled was it was layered. At the time, it was, you know, I took it all in, and it was really quite helpful for me. My husband passed away, so I needed to find a place to start. So what I did was to ground myself. I found, you can't see it on here, which is disappointing, my mother's doily. It's an imprint. So I used that as a foundation for the piece. And all I could remember was the fact that in talking to Albert to Snake, him telling me about the layers and moving together and coming to one. So my piece is called Forever Together. Because simply, and as tragic and as difficult as that would be, it is what we need to do. To solve, to go forward together is the only way that we will be able to bring some sort of harmony within this tragic situation. And everywhere, I think we just have to keep our eyes open. We have to talk about what's going on. You know, every time I turn around, the fishery in the salmon fishery, the wild salmon fishery out in the BC coast was almost destroyed by the government and the industry that's out there, and it was the indigenous people that stepped in. And they really should be given right back the rights to run that. That's where that should be. That's what we need to fight for. Anyway, miigwech. Too much?
No, I got that.
Too long?
No, 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 it was beautiful, beautiful. The next, Jeanette passed off her work to Mercedes Sandy. Now, as we pass these, remember, the artist did not see anything other than the person before them. So Albert began a conversation.
Hello. Thank you for being here today and listening to our stories that we have to share today for reconciliation. I joined this group in the first round. I think that was 2015. Yep. And then in the second round, I was part of it in spirit. I just had my first child, and I really wanted to be a part of the group, but motherhood is very busy and overwhelming at times, so I took a break from doing art for a bit. So I was really happy when Mary Lou asked me if I wanted to be part of the third group. So I'm after Jeanette, and we had a really long phone conversation about her piece. She sent me the images for it. And I was really moved by her process that she was going through and learning about reconciliation and her history, her own personal history and her own grief that she felt for her during her piece. So in my very first piece in the first round, it was a very angry piece. It came from a place of anger and frustration that this is our history. And this round, it's more of acceptance and acknowledging what has happened in the past and moving forward as together. So while I was speaking to her, I received the image of, I need to make a blanket out of paper. I don't know why, but I just have to do that. And I can see people in this piece, but I don't know how to put them on the blanket, showing their face and giving them an identity. I didn't want to give them an identity so that people can put themselves in those shoes, say, that's me, that's my story. So this piece is called Blanket. Blanket is a dedication to my grandmother, the late Eileen Meneg. She was a well-known quilter within my community of Chimnessing. After her passing, she sent my mother a message that you need to create a blanket. And the funny thing is, my mom is not artsy at all. She's not a quilter, and she definitely did not want to make a blanket. So I attempted to make a blanket using paper. I'm a mixed media artist, so I attempted to make a blanket out of paper in my own way and not like in a traditional way of sewing a blanket. Oh, sorry. So during the call to action, sorry? Oh, okay. So during the call to action round 3, I received the image to create the blanket out of paper bags. This blanket is my contribution to truth and reconciliation. It is inspired by my grandmother's quilts. I attempted to recreate her pattern of children. Their hair is made out of yarn. My grandmother would braid each of their hair on her quilts. In this work, I cut the braids off the children and left them at the bottom of the blanket down here. The lace found on the bottom and the top of the piece is my own rendition of the wampum belt, the 2 rivers flowing side by side, an agreement to share the land. Like the children on the blanket, the indigenous people of Turtle Island have given up so much to coexist with their settler counterpart. We have received nothing but meaningless words in return. Colonization started with a blanket, blankets filled with smallpox and given to the indigenous people to make them sick. Today, in our communities, homemade quilts are given at births, weddings. It all started with a blanket. Now I give this homemade paper quilt to reconciliation, signifying the new beginnings to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Mercedes. Petra Hewson was kind enough to archivally frame this and suspend it in a way that it would really shine and honor Mercedes' piece. Petra, want to wave your hand? Thank you very much for using your gifts to support reconciliation. The next person is, who did you hand off to, Mercedes? Joanna? No. You handed yours off to Joanna McEwen. Joanna? Yes, you are. That's a Johnny Cash song.
Okay.
Almost. Thank you, Stan. These are beautiful.
All right.
There you go. I'm gonna take this.
Well, thanks everybody for being here. And I don't have to shout. It's such a wonderful occasion to share all sorts of things. And my work was inspired partly by what I saw before me, but at the same time, there was a whole bunch of stuff going on in the news. Sorry, I'm not used to using these things. And it had to do with, of course, one of the greatest scourges in the history of Canada, and that are those horrible things called residential schools, which, of course, were designed to not necessarily educate, but to take away people's traditions, their heritage, erase their genetic structure, and on and on and on and on it went. And so the orange shirt has been adopted as a color of hope, a mixture of two colors, which is really a nice thing to think about. And there are a lot of people, including all of you here and many, many people across Canada and hopefully the United States, who are working really hard to allow people to have their cultures but still be part of a greater political entity, which we call Canada. So in this case, this is a Royal Canadian Mounted Police fellow from BC. And he was working in a part of British Columbia, and there was a predator out and about. And he made it his business to find that person and bring them to justice. He was absolutely, totally focused on it. I don't know whether you got a chance to read the story, but it's very moving. And so the whole business of adopting a color, orange, which is, when you think of it, an interesting color to have chosen. Do we all know why orange was chosen? Hello? Does anybody know why orange was chosen? Yeah. So there. I don't have my orange shirt on, but I have one. But in any event, so hence the orange shirt. It's all very easy to see how it comes together. And rather than do anything more, I thought I would just let the news reports of the incident and what was going on be part of the work, so that this helps to expand and amplify the story of the orange shirt and what happened. And at National Day, I wonder how many countries around the world have a National Day of truth and reconciliation. I think we're pretty darn lucky. Thank you.
Yes, you get a gift bag. We are gift givers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Joanna handed off to Tara Roy. Tara is a very interesting young Anishinaabe Kwe, young woman, and she, this is her first time with our group. She has dedicated herself to returning to the original art of hide tanning. So she spends her time finding hides, traditionally stretching and tanning them, smoking them. So her greatest joy in life is returning to the earth, bringing back the old traditions, to tell the stories to the next generation. I think Tara's probably about 20. She's an amazing young woman. 21. So this was the image that she gave to us. A birch bark canoe in the water with the beauty of the land. There's that big circle. Yellow shirt with a blue door in it. Big blue water droplets. And red something over here that looks like the shadow, the cutout of a human profile with the tentacles of probably blood memory. Tara was unable to be with us today, but she sends this to inspire you. Tara passed her work off to Xavier Fernandez.
My name is Xavier Fernandez, and this is my third round here being a part of this. And the first round, I started off as the first person in all of it, and at that time I had an image of hope. The second round, it was more about reflection and seeing things from a different perspective. This round here, my image speaks about young lives that were taken away and buried. This is represented by the leaves in just under the ground here. The truth is there, and it is being revealed. There are many youth that are speaking of their experiences and who belong to inclusive groups, but some of them are cut off and not heard. So they get to sit on committees, but they're not listened to. That does happen. And it's good that they're there, because the more that these groups are inclusive, the better chances of people to listen. And I think that's something that's very important for all of us to listen. There are many youths that are speaking of their experiences who belong in inclusive groups but are cut off and not heard. This is portrayed by the pieces, by the branches that have been cut off before having a chance to grow. I have some branches that have been cut off and left on the ground, and this is what that represents in my image. Many First Nations people that I have talked to have the grandfather teachings in them, and you can see and hear the experience coming out of them, like the roots of the tree giving life to the branches that reach high and wide. All their teachings are in the roots. They're what gives the tree its life. There are changes being made to help that tree of life grow. It takes many people to do that. Even though there are some that are just learning of hope, of truth and reconciliation, which will be an ongoing process. Others are taking steps to make connections to help create a life full of what we are all aware of: bravery, honesty, humility, respect, love, truth, and wisdom. These are also the grandfather teachings. Together, we can stop the negative actions and allow all humans to flourish and draw strength from the roots of our teachings. I find that through my experience, I found that doesn't matter what your spirituality is or belief, they're usually a positive, come from a positive place. It's usually mankind that decides to say, what I believe is better than what you believe. I believe is right and you're wrong. But that's not what the teachings of any of these beliefs tell us. It's us as humans that make these choices. And it's us that have to decide to move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier. Feels good not to be the first or the last, doesn't it? Yeah, that's kind of secure. Yeah. Freaked him out the last time. And Xavier passed off to Wanda Meneg. Wanda Meneg, please. Wanda Meneg is a new member for our round, and we are so delighted for her to join us. So you get to speak with the feather, and I'll undo your...
Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's the first one here. Okay, so I have a bit of a story behind mine. Xavier handed off to me, and when we were speaking together, we talked about what it was like to be different in a world that expected us to meld into their way of being. And what that said to me was that we need to find a way to come together to let people be who they're supposed to be at their core, to let people have the freedom to live within their culture and yet be a part of broader society at the same time. Shortly, I had a bit of imposter syndrome being invited in here because I didn't consider myself an artist. I've been painting for about 20 years, but for me, it's just hacking around with paint. So after speaking with Xavier and mulling over how to even tackle this project, because for me this was just enormous, I couldn't wrap my head around it. I had a dream, which, I mean, it sounds really hokey, but I had a dream. And in this dream, I was walking through the woods. I'm a hiker, so it's common for me to, be walking through the woods. But in my dream, I'm walking through this forest. And I come up on this ridge, and I look out at this sky, and the sky is beautiful pink. And I'm shaking right now, but... and there's these bright yellow lights blinking through that pink, and I guess the pink in my dream was the Milky Way. And I heard a rustling over my left shoulder, and I looked, and there was this elder. And he spoke to me, and he pointed up to the sky, and he said, "Those kids are going home." And I didn't really understand what he meant. Because again, my mom was a residential school survivor, so we didn't grow up in our culture. I have no connection to the teachings of my culture. It wasn't until a few days after having that dream that I saw a posting that my brother had done that described the Anishinaabe teachings of the stars and star people. And how in our culture, when we pass away, we pass to the stars, and we pass along the spirit road and back to the ancestors. So for me, this all came together. It was mind-boggling. Being able to have had that dream and then have it explained to me just sort of haphazardly days later. So this is what came to fruition here. I have, and this doesn't necessarily speak to just Indigenous people. this speaks to everyone. What I have here is my elder, depicted as the person in the middle here. And we've got two small, they're sort of like geese, those are representing our children. And they're following him. And he is giving spirit back to the sky. And it represents the full circle of coming back to who we are as Indigenous people in our core, and knowing that we walk between two worlds. In the dream that I had when I was standing on the ridge and looking out, on the one side off to the left was the darkness of the forest, and off to the right you could see just the glow of a city. So to me that said that as Indigenous people we're walking in two worlds and we're trying to balance both of them. And we're struggling. And we're struggling because we haven't come back to who we are at our core, at our heart. And again, the road in my painting here, it's not quite together because these two worlds haven't come together yet. And so I think in terms of reconciliation, we've got a long road to walk together to get back to who we were.
Wow, will you come back the next round? That's amazing, thank you. I'm just so delighted that you had a dream. I'm kind of big on dreams. The next person, Wanda handed hers off to Peter Adams. And we'll move, yes, thank you very much, Ted. Yep. That's good. Two geese, I can't believe it. Okay. I'll get your clock. Roll the drums, here comes Peter Adams.
Okay, so this is my third time being a part of this collaborative project. And I actually looked at past emails this morning and was reminded, as Mary Lou said earlier, that it was 2015 that this was all started, and 7 years. And a lot's happened in the world in 7 years, as you all know. But it's been a great honor to be part of this collaborative art project. I'm going to read a statement about the piece that I wrote some time ago. I think it was basically what I passed on to Paul, when, who was next in line after me. Apologies, I'm sort of repeating some of what Wanda has shared already. Wanda told me about a dream that had inspired her piece, and of the story of the Star People and the Ojibwe belief that their people fell from sky to earth. She explained that the Milky Way is considered the spirit road, and that when we pass away, our spirits travel that spirit road to return to their ancestors. The elder in her dream had said, "See the lights? That's those kids going home." My piece is inspired by Wanda's painting as well as her dream. She had interpreted the lights in her dream as representing the children discovered in unmarked graves traveling the spirit road. Wanda also talked about how the northern lights are believed to represent ancestors dancing, and she wondered if brighter northern lights in the last year were a result of all those souls being finally released. I represented those children rising from the unmarked graves with dots of light in the darkness. And of course, the northern lights represent the ancestors, but also they added an element of hopefulness to this dark time. And the dark figure represents me as witness to these times, and simultaneously it represents anyone looking at the painting. We are all grappling with this unspeakable history, and attempting to process that history is a necessary step towards reconciliation. Wanda also told me unsettling details of her mother's experience in residential school, as well as her own traumatic school experience. Then she told me that for her, reconciliation will mean finding ourselves again so that we may walk that spirit road back to our ancestors, balancing who we are in our hearts with who we need to be in a greater colonized society. I chose to honor many of the things she told me by incorporating fragments of text in the underpainting. I'm sure you can't see this at the very back, but if you come closer later, there's a bunch of text throughout, and it's a little bit blurred by the painting that followed, incorporating that text. But I kind of liked that symbolically, that it was blurred, because it sort of represents to me that personal stories and personal accounts of historic events are at risk of being blurred, of being forgotten or lost if they're not repeated and shared and passed on. So thank you, everyone. Miigwech.
And Peter Adams passed off to Paul Whittam. We got a lot of Peters and Pauls in this group. Not to mention the church, huh? Okay. Paul was unable to make it today, and Jenny Clark is going to share with us what he shared with her.
Okay, for Paul Whittam, can you hear me? It's okay? Okay. So the Anishinaabe, or Ojibwe people, believe that we come down from the stars and choose to live our life as a physical being here on earth with our family. When we are finished here, our spirits ascend back to the astral plane, where we continue on with the cycle. I'll try. Should I begin again? Okay. When we are finished here, our spirits ascend back to the astral plane, where we continue on with the cycle. This means that life does not end and only has a continuance of sorts. We return to our ancestors from generations past, present, and future within the star world. Paul says, "My painting can be viewed in many ways. I will share two, and then let the viewer interpret their own ideas on the subject." 1. The main figure is one of our many ancestors welcoming the stars, residential school kid spirits, to the spirit world, as the ancestor is surrounded by a welcoming glow of the aurora borealis, which relates to Peter's painting, the painting that preceded it. The main figure, this is the second concept, the main figure could be a residential school attendee waiting here on earth to return to the stars, to begin life anew. And so he calls out to the ancestors. This image is meant to engage you and create an open dialogue on what it makes you feel. Every child matters. And Paul then passed his work on to me. Doesn't. Take the painting.
Okay, thank you for
Okay, so when Paul passed his piece on to me and we discussed it, I was really fascinated by the thought that we are stars. I mean, often you stand outside and look at the sky, and there we are. We think of our relatives and loved ones. So I'll just read what I wrote here. In the darkness, I asked the Creator for inspiration. No image came to me as I mourned the loss of my parents, who had recently departed our world. There was, however, a white orb that floated in and out of my mental vision. Perhaps it was my mother's spirit, but no visual language came. Easter weekend arrived, and it was my turn to channel an image for our group. I sorted through my prints created many years ago and found the very early print that I called Ancestors, and I knew it would be the basis of this new work. So the red and yellow in the background here is one of my prints from around the year 2000, I think. And the ancestors hold hands in a childlike paper chain, and there are impressions of roots and a crocheted heart printed red on gold, one of several color proofs. Our guide, Jeff had spoken of the two-row wampum, and so I cut 2 rows of boys and girls holding hands. And so my work evolved intuitively. Beads and silk sequins fell in place as stars, inspired by Paul Whittam's work. Easter, resurrection of the lost children, the discovery of the unmarked graves that shocked our culture into realization that these institutions were misguided and their work remained incomplete. I made an untidy beadwork and left it finished, which is part of the cross in there. To my delight, one of our group saw a pipe, a peace pipe perhaps, promises to be kept and new understandings generated. The materials I worked with connect to my earlier piece of the child's dress in round 1, created for round 1. Black and red papers stitched together with invisible threads and black running stitches. The stars are also stitched down using invisible threads, and one dark blue bead hides within the work, representing the imperfections of our existence. Look carefully, and you will see the unmarked graves, the children rising up, and the twinkle and promise of the ancestors returning. I wish to thank Petra Hewson for framing this work in the spirit of reconciliation, the Church of St. Paul's for housing our work, Mary Lou for bringing us together, and Paul Whittam for his inspiration. Thank you. Thank you.
Jenny passed her work on to Mary Ann. Yes.
Anin Bojo Gwegwe Gagina Bashbagoni Nadishnagas. My name is Mary Ann Miyangwe Manach, Mary Ann. My mom's a Miyangwe, my father is a Manach. And I guess my Indian name is Bashbagoni. My mom gave it to me, it means it blossoms. So here's my painting here, and I had received a message earlier in that week, and it was just past Easter time, and I was kind of feeling weird, and I remember telling everybody else that this was the first Lent I actually didn't fast in my entire life. I was born and raised in the Catholic Church, and I spent a lot of time in it. And this year, I was really feeling the effects of the colonialism on my body, and I really felt off, I felt sick, and I felt like I was missing something. Like, I guess like as a child, my ceremony was going to church. I liked being in the choir, and I liked bringing up the stuff to the altar and whatnot. And then so this year, after Easter passed, and I was just feeling hurt and sad, and I was looking around at all my friends in relationships, and they were all kind of going through all the same problems over and over and over again. So I originally ended up titling this one, Wrap Me in Your Colonial Love. And it's got retitled to HBC Love, but it was on a different blanket beforehand. It was just like a quilt that I had painted behind it because, as it's been mentioned, in my family, well, I guess in a lot of Indigenous families, there's a lot of quiltings. And my mom was a hand quilter, and my grandma was a quilter, and everyone loved quilting and crocheting and whatnot. So it was originally a quilt behind it. Before I started to realize that people around my school and in Toronto, they were wearing like those Hudson's Bay jackets. And then I kind of realized also that nobody knew the story behind them either. And just like Mercedes said earlier, like it all started with a blanket. And I just really want to tell the story of the blanket and see how, like, even like the friends I had in high school, they would have like these blankets in like their houses, and they were just like accessories to them. Like, oh yeah, it's just a little expensive blanket my parents bought, whatever. And I would have to sit there all awkwardly and be like, no, that's not like a little expensive, nice blanket to me. Like when I look at that blanket, I think about getting hurt and getting sick and our people being ravaged to their deaths, and it was never a really good feeling for me. So I ended up creating this piece about, I guess, that ongoing colonialism and that ongoing feeling that, you know, even in our own relationships when it's to Indigenous people, there's still like that back hurt of the church and of that original like genocide that sits inside of us. And I really wanted to make this piece to show that like our Indigenous femmes are still being harmed and they're still being taken away, and sometimes it's even by our own. And I just wanted to kind of raise awareness through this one, because I was just, I don't know, really going through it when I made this piece. And yeah, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that damn story about the Hudson's Bay blanket, because I am so sick of seeing people wearing them around the city, and it, like, I don't know, it makes me feel sick. So I'm like, stop doing that. You're just bringing it back up again. But anyways, miigwech. And I'd also like to say miigwech to Mange Minakwe, Jeff Maneg, for having me here. I've been really lucky over the past year to work under Jeff, learning medicine and working around the park. And I got really lucky to get my studio all set up there and really get that reconnection with the land over the last few years, and that's been really helping that colonial guilt. So miigwech, Jeff, and miigwech, Mary Lou, for having me here as well.
Our absolute pleasure having you join the group, and we hope that you'll join us for the 4th round. You are the future. Now, Mary Ann handed off to John Ulrich. John, there he is. From the young to the young at heart.
Before I unveil my piece, I'd like to say a couple of things in response to Mary Ann. Gratitude for sharing the context to your piece, Mary Ann. It is an incredibly powerful painting, and I think I understand now a bit better where its power comes from. The irony and the cynicism that is expressed in the Hudson Bay blanket and the act of spreading smallpox through the agency of that is, I think, part of the power of the piece. But the thing that absolutely transfixed me was the expression in the eyes, which isn't, it's much more obvious when you're this close to the painting. So if you haven't been this close to the painting, I really encourage you to experience that. There's a profound sadness, there's a sense of outrage, and there's also a defiance. But frankly, words fail me in terms of describing how that expression affects me. And the absence of eyes in the other figure, I think, just enhances that impact. So, not surprisingly then, my piece is mainly about eyes. There are 3 expressions in the eyes in my piece. One, they're just plain wide open. What is it's a direct gaze. In this one, it's more of a downward gaze, a gaze of humility. And in the third, they're closed tight shut. And each expression offers a path towards reconciliation. I could maybe dance to the piece, maybe not. The direct gaze talks to the obvious, the stuff that we know, that there's a need for practical compensation, there's a need for financial compensation in response to the history. Things like drinkable water, livable homes, ownership of land. That's going to take money to fix those things, and it's pretty darn obvious what needs fixing and what it's going to take to fix it. So that stuff is eyes wide open. The downward gaze of humility, I chose to talk to things that need changing, that are complicated, systemic, relational, that are not just going to be fixed by money. And I'm thinking of things like getting rid of the Indian Act, allowing self-governance around issues of education and health care. And there are others which escape me in the memory, but are there in the statement that goes with the painting. But it's for complex systemic issues that take a lot of patience and humility to fix them. Eyes tight shut refer to issues of soul, issues of deep personal wounding. In order to heal those deep intergenerational impacts of the horrendous things that have been done to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Imagination and soul are the antidotes to those. I'm so gratified to hear so many of the elders today speaking about the power of imagination. Austin Clarkson represented that within this community. And I think it can be very, very helpful. At one point, I had some white crosses in the background to the painting, and I thought, you know what, they really don't belong there. I'm going to put a question mark in its place. This happened at the time of discovery of more buried children, and I think the question mark, relates to why, and who, and where, and those basic questions. Miigwech.
It's his eyes. And he passed his work on to Brendan Kopagog. And now I'm going to pass it on to Guy Kopagog.
Can I go without Mike?
Sure you may.
Perfect.
Oh, no, we can't. We have to record you. Yes. You take that and we'll...
All right, so I am Brandon Kopagog, and please don't record me. You do not have my permission, Jewel. So I will go... No, I'm kidding, I'm joking. So I'll go from a technical point first. So mine is the acrylic paint on canvas, done in a realistic or realism style. I went with a darker hues, darker values to create this emotional experience for you. Tried to capture like some sadness, some despair. And really what it's about for me, after receiving John's picture, and I had this idea, like with the question mark there and with the eyes, like who am I? And I always struggled with this. So like being First Nation, but not growing up on reserve, identifying as First Nation was difficult. Like it just wasn't in me, it wasn't taught in me. My mother went through day school, so she never taught the language to us. Our only experience in First Nation was going to the reserve during school break, so it was more of a vacation destination for us. So, I mean, for us, we had no idea what being First Nation was. So that's what I tried to capture here. So with John's work, I guess with the question mark there, the question for me was, like, who am I? So I titled this piece, Lost Identity. So it's more about my own lost identity and trying to figure out who I am and where I fit in the grand scheme of things. So I picked this picture, and it reminds me of a story. So I went to Mexico a couple of years ago. So, of course, any First Nation goes to Mexico. We look very similar. We have the same features. I'll be honest, we have the same features. So one day a lady comes up to me, she starts speaking Spanish to me, and it's the craziest thing. So I can speak a little Spanish. So I'm like, no habla español. So I'm telling her I don't speak Spanish in Spanish. So she looks at me, so then she's like, Cubana. I'm like, no, I'm not Cuban either. So then she goes through all this list. So then I tried to explain to her what I was, and I'm like, I'm First Nation. So she looks at me with this really, like, confused look. Okay, what does that mean? So I'm like, oh, Indian. And then she's like, from India. And I'm like, no, I'm not from India. So the only thing I could think of at the time to explain what a First Nation person was, so I went, woo, 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 and then she was like, oh. So So, yeah, it's funny in hindsight, not so funny. So when I was doing this, I was trying to answer this question of like, who am I? And so it's more about like cultural appropriation. Like we were always taught or told, like in school, what First Nation people were. But it was through the eyes of the Western society. So, I put a headdress in here, which is representative of First Nation people, not indicative to certain tribes, but, it is associated with First Nation people. So, you could put that anywhere in the world and people would say, oh, that's First Nation. But, that's not really who we are, right? So I went with, like, not a lot of clothing. I went a little bit of, like dirty, they're not really clean. Just trying to evoke, like that image that was always presented about First Nation people. But like, again, it's about cultural appropriation. This is like the end of the story. So this is now all the truth is coming out with the Truth and Reconciliation, and this is the end of it. As you can see, the sun is setting. There's a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, a lot of sadness with the story of the truth that comes out about First Nation people. So I've set it up, so hopefully I'm on the fourth part of this, because I want to do a sister print to this. So one part's going to be the truth, the second part's going to be the reconciliation. So that was my vision. Oh.
Thank you, Guy Brandon Kopagog. I so appreciate it. Hasta luego, eh? Yeah. I was down there once and wanted to get a taxi to a place, a plaza of El Ángel, and I had to go. And the taxi driver went, oh, okay. He took me over and said, yeah, he found the place. Okay, he passed off to me. And we can bring it. Guy Brandon Kopagog, I did not touch that. Oh, good. You see, it's the lake that he's crying. It's just, Roddy, got it? Yeah, okay. Honest, I didn't touch it, Ted, honest. But you know what? That's how I felt when I got his picture, when I got his work. That is exactly how I felt, because I thought, you got to be kidding me. Here is this individual, obviously an Indigenous person, and the pain, the trauma, the isolation. I thought, oh. So here's the one that I did. And I sat for days trying to figure this out because I was so distressed at the sorrow and the pain that I saw in that work. And poor Marilyn was waiting for my work, and I kept saying, oh my God, Marilyn, I still can't figure out what I'm going to do because I'm too busy crying. And then it finally dawned on me, I wanted to do it as a perspective of a child, mainly because it was about, the legacy of the residential schools. And I'll read the rest of this so I don't go on. Someone said that the real hell on earth is having to face the negative effects of our actions on others and the earth. Intentional and unintentional effects. Well, we are experiencing that now. And I was delighted to see in the TRC introduction that even Murray Sinclair wrote that. Not exactly those words, but said, no, we have to really look at things. And it's going to be difficult. We're going to have to suffer. And this person should not be alone. As a caring human being, I cannot turn a blind eye to the suffering. And I need to learn as much as I can and question myself and the history that I've learned. I have to forgive myself and my ancestors, but never forget the history of this all. It can repeat. And that means dealing with big emotions like shame, guilt, admitting I don't know, but I don't know what to do to make it better, and the temptation to ignore it and hope it just goes away. It's a whirlwind of emotion. And like Guy Brandon said, it's the first stage of a set of representing the truth and reconciliation. When I heard the Ubuntu song this morning, I just couldn't believe my ears. I thought that's the best way to say this painting. So there's two humanoids, humans, brothers, friends, allies, whatever, and they're witnessing each other's pain, and they're both crying rivers of tears and blue, and their hearts are bleeding rivers of red. Those rivers are hitting the earth, they're returning the waters to the earth, and those tears and those droplets are forming themselves into all different types of new little flowers, and they're creeping themselves up into this dried up old tree like Xavier's. And into that tree, the drops of blood are going to revive the life of that tree. Around the corner, there are other little flowers blossoming and growing to lead us off the picture in the future. We need to witness each other, to find the truth. That's easy. To process it is not easy, because what does that mean in the future? Well, it means Ubuntu. I become through you, and you become through me. I need you, you need me. We are one big family, and yet in two different vessels. You have differences. I will see the best in you, and I know that you will see the best in me. Boy, that would be charitable. I hope that you do. I will guard your dignity, and you will live, or we will live in harmony. Now, I know these truths have been spoken before in the Tuvalu Wampum in the 1600s, I think it was, but we're remembering it. We need to remember that we have made those promises. You have waited 500 years for us. I will lift your spirit high and wipe the tears from your eyes. And as a chorus, we are strong when every one of us sings along. So lift your voice and your heart. Let us hear what's in your heart. I am a human like you, but we have differences, that's true. Ubuntu. It was a gift of apartheid concept that we helped spell out for South Africa, and they're giving us Ubuntu back. So this was a very painful work, and I had to hand it off to Marilyn yet, and I was, anyway. And you know, it's just not easy, and I've been doing this for a while, but I was really, really blown away that after all I've learned and done, that I sat down and cried for so long that week. So I'm really grateful, Guy, because I still have more decolonizing and humanizing to do, and I'm looking forward to that process. And I hand it off to Marilyn George.
Wena bonjour. I forgot my sheet at home, but I guess I really sort of stepped back, you know, in time when we found those little children. I really broke my heart. So, you know, and I had to find you know, sort of like a good way to, you know, to feel that, to feel it in a positive way. You know, we went to the residential schools. I went to the Indian Day School, and my parents suffered the consequences of the residential school. You know, the alcoholism and abuse, and I experienced that passing down to me, the next generation. But these children here, they were buried, and these are just the little hands that are waiting to be lifted up to the Creator. And this is grandmother and grandfather, our spirit people, the Anishinaabe, and the eagle is watching over us and protecting us with his beautiful wide wings and his medicine coming down. Pray for those children that are found. And there was like a revelation, like, we've been talking about, like in my work, that for years and years I talked about the residential schools, and I'm not personally went to it, but I suffered the effects of it through my family. But my parents quit drinking when I was 11 years old, and my children have not seen me drink. To me, the not drinking is very important in our lives, because so many people look at Native people and they say, they're just drunks. So I want to say that, I'm proud to be sober, and I'm not a drunk, and I don't want to carry on that image as our people are growing. And that's what those children, they come back after years of being in these schools, and they come back to that alcoholism, and they don't know their parents anymore. They don't know how to love. They don't know how to embrace. They don't know anything about our truth and our humility, all the grandfathers. That's what our children learned. They didn't learn the things that we are learning today. We are learning to be open and, sharing and what we went through. And that's what it's important, that everybody has to know that, what we went through. And then we can go forward from here. And that's what the eagle is watching over us, and, make sure we talk in a good way, what happened before, what's going on now, and what will go on in the future. So I just wanted to say miigwech. Wow.
I have a gift for you if you want to go sit down. I'll get it for you. And Marilyn handed off to Ryan. Oh, I don't think we need to move yours, Ryan. It's too delicate. Let's just move things back a little bit. See if I can do this. Ryan. Oh, that's okay. If you take this, I'll undo the
Okay.
glass for you.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Okay. So first to start off, and I mentioned that earlier before, I'm from Mauritius, which is an African island east of Africa, and I grew up there. So growing up, based on my family's work that they've done in the independence of our country, I know where I come from. I know the history of colonization in my country, but I'm a newcomer to Canada, and what that means is that I kind of come with a blank slate when I first came 10 years ago. So when Mary Lou asked me to join this, I kind of thought that was a really interesting thing and great challenge, because I know where I come from, but I'd like to know where I'm going, and that's a great way of looking after 10 years where I'm actually going, right? So for that, I just want to say thank you to Mary Lou, but also to all the artists, the knowledge keepers who helped us along the way, because it's been a really great experience for me, because it's my first time also being part of this project, right? So just to try to keep it short, I'll kind of read my statement and keep going. So one of the things I wanted to share with everyone was something that my friend, knowledge keeper, indigenous Innu writer, and teacher, Jean-Pierre Chini, told me the first time that I met him, when I went to his house, he told me that for 10,000 years, the Innu people would learn using their own knowledge through observation, experience, and listening. And the blackboard was 200,000 square miles, and that was the land. And that always resonated with me, like it's something that, it's really tells you a lot about the culture. Although, like, again, like I said, I'm a bit of a blank slate, and it just said a lot to me about what they value and how they value the land. So again, when I came to Canada, one of the biggest surprises I found was just how little was taught about the Indigenous people of Canada. It was just mind-boggling. Like it was kind of surprising. And when I started to work with Indigenous communities, collaborating on environmental projects, going more north, and just being able to get this opportunity to go to different communities, get to know people, make friends, and things like that. One of the things that I began to do more is do photography. And again, that photography for me was just a way for me to first explain to my family what I was experiencing and seeing, but also a way for me to slowly understand what's happening too, and be able to look back at it and understand what's truly happening. And so for me, that's how I began documenting everything. And one of the things that came out for it was the resilience of communities to try to be on the land, to be able to be back there and try to find solutions to what's happening to them. And like I said again, like luckily for me, like being able to meet someone like Jean-Pierre from Shehadjit Innu First Nation in Labrador, that's, for me, it's truly amazing, like it became a lot less about work, like going to his house initially was what you call consultation, right, to a project. But what it became was more about taking the time to have tea and actually sit down, talk, learn, understand what the truth is and what it actually means and how it's defined by the people who experienced it, but also the effects of intergenerational trauma, how that kind of percolates throughout various generations, and I've now been able to understand it better. It also means understanding from his perspective what are the fears and hopes as he's a great-grandfather, understanding the fears and hopes for the next generation of Indigenous people. So again, like as a newcomer coming to Canada, that really highlighted for me that as a newcomer, I also have responsibilities that I need to understand. And for some of the things I've learned from communities and friends, that made me understand that I should be a quiet observer and understand, watch, listen, observe, and really value those unique relationships I'm gaining through meeting other Indigenous people in Canada. So when I talked to Marilyn after she showed me her piece, which was very moving, we had a really great and long conversation together about how her piece was inspired by after the discovery of graves in Kamloops, but also her experience with her family, with intergenerational trauma and the residential schools, but also the Indian day schools. For me, what kind of came out to me was the resilience of Indigenous communities, but what we started talking about was also so what comes next. And one thing that came out of a conversation that me and Marilyn had was, well, healing, I guess, would be another step that would come after before you can actually achieve reconciliation, right? Because like we said, finding out the truth is traumatic, not just for, I think, Indigenous people, because they've been immersed in trauma, I guess that's the best way to say it. But for even settlers and newcomers like me, it's quite unsettling. So there needs to be a period also of being able to heal to then move forward. And I think that came out through looking at going back to the land. One of the things I was also happy about was, because this, again, was my first time, I was a bit overwhelmed, was talking to Nancy King. When I talked to Nancy, it was really interesting to see like the work she had done before, because I looked at what she had done in the previous round, but it was also looking at how uncovering the truth, again, is hard, and that, healing is needed, and that it meant that, my Indigenous counterparts should be having their land back, right? So the work that I did here is called Our Land, And that's a series of photos that explores the relationship between the land and Canada's Indigenous people, but me through my eyes as a quiet observer, because I feel like that's what I should be doing right now. I should be learning, I should be observing, and I shouldn't have anything to say. I should just be there and appreciate that. Again, it aims to highlight how the land can provide a safe space for Indigenous people to heal, for some of the new generation to learn about the history and culture, and provide them the time to look at how they want to move forward. People always say, you know, like a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I think that the truth of what happened to Canada's Indigenous people is worth more than 1,000 words. Then the relationship with the land is even more than 10,000 words, 1,000,000 words. So what I decided to do then was to start actually interviewing people I had photographed to ask them about what they understood about how truth and reconciliation is perceived, understand better what the trauma they went through, and also ask them what they think the future holds for them as peoples, right? So the photos that are displayed here are examples of what I've captured while traveling to different communities. But since Mary Lou said that there would be a QR code and you'd be able to get more information, I decided to create kind of like a slideshow or a video that includes some of the words of what they shared with me. And again, working with them, it took quite a while to work with them, more than a month and numerous hours on the phone, but to share what that means for them to be with the land, on the land, and healing. And yeah, I just, again, wanted to say thank you for this opportunity, and I also wanted to thank the Indigenous artists that were part of this. I know when I first presented the pieces, I was a bit not too confident about it, but for example, talking to Mercedes and other artists, it's been, again, a great opportunity for me to learn. I think we mentioned that before. This is, especially for, I think, non-Indigenous artists, it's a great learning opportunity, so I'm forever thankful, so thank you.
Thank you, and I hope you'll do round 4 with us. Oh, thank you. And Ryan handed off to Chief Ladybird, Ogima Kwebene. Kwebenes, almost. I'm close.
Anine, it's been a long time since I've talked in front of people. This is so strange. I think maybe since before the pandemic. So I have notes. I don't usually do notes, but I think it'll really help today. So this is my piece, and it's about food sovereignty and community. When I think about truth and reconciliation, I sometimes feel disenchanted. I believe in a lot of the calls to action. I think they're very good in theory, but I often find myself questioning who it serves when they're implemented. I get the sense that there are a lot of gestures that are insincere, especially because there are so many young people who don't have access to the land or even adequate housing or clean water in many of our communities. They often don't have access to language programs, nor do they have someone to teach them how to hunt or fish. So in this piece, I started with a photograph. I was inspired by the photographic nature of Ryan's work and the joy of people being on the land. I think that's so important and has become a really important part of my life and my family's life. So in this photo, there's my brother, my partner, and 2 of my stepsons during the pickerel run. And during this time, they speared many pickerel to provide food for our families for the year. They also gave away a lot of fish to folks in the community, to elders who can't go out on their own, or people who love to eat fish but don't have a way of getting out on the water. We never sell the fish, it's always gifted. And watching, you know, my partner and the kids and my family put these skills to use to feed everyone just like warms my heart every single day. There's also some added context here that Tim, who's at the back there, if everyone wants to look at him and be like, hi, Tim. And my brother, Doug, learned like the sustainable aspect of spearing and fishing, mixing the eggs with the sperm to put it back in the water so that the fish can continue spawning and we're not taking too much. That's very important teaching to us. We want to ensure that we're not taking without continuing that life cycle. But overall, this piece is a love letter to the cold spring nights under the stars, hauling fish from the river to the car, standing in the kitchen with my family, laughing and cleaning fish for hours. This is what our communities deserve to return to. We deserve to be close and feel happy and connected to the land and the waters and each other, and Land Back will help us achieve this. Miigwech.
I hope you return the fourth round and final. Okay, well. Chief Lady Bird passed off her work to Christina Luck. Now, Christina Luck, I said, has moved to Ottawa, and so she sent me her statement. This is acrylic on panel, laser cut paper and wood, stick, pencil, crayon, linen thread. That's it. The stick is the pickerel with a land back tattoo. If you look real close, you'll see the tattoo down on it. There are 3 layers on this panel. 3 flying ducks are painted splotches, now covered by the second layer of paint splatter. The final layer has wood and paper attached. I did a series of splatter paintings in 2018. They represent sounds, drum beats, heartbeats, birdsong, voices. They are background. I had a dream when I was a young artist of a green painting that had healing properties. When I work in greens, I feel a special surge of energy trying to capture a bit of that perfect green. I felt I had something to add to green sound and waited for the idea to appear. When Chief Lady Bird sent me her piece, I knew this was it. Her image showing the men fishing and all that means in Indigenous tradition is reality for a few, but a beautiful future for so many if land and traditions can be reclaimed. 3 flying ducks, green sound, to me connotes sitting on the riverbank, listening to the sounds, watching the reflections in the water, looking through the surface to life below, looking closely at the stickfish, you will notice letters in reflection spelling out land back, and will hopefully want to find out more about this movement. From Christina Luck. I couldn't believe it when somebody said it was Wanda who said she had ducks or geese in her painting. Yeah, when you said that, I thought, you got to be kidding me. You must know Christina Luck. So we end this by looking at the whole story, starting out in balance, in harmony with the earth, going through all the different processes, and ending with land back. Sort of goes full circle. So I guess we have to ask ourselves, what does this look like and sound like in Simcoe County? And we'll have to imagine that together. So if anybody has any questions, or if you'd like to mill around with the paintings, feel free to mill. Good luck on not hitting the easels. These easels were made by Stan, who works here at the center, or at the church. He was kind enough to create all of these brown easels for us. So they will be returned to the Ogimamiskwake Gallery, and eventually the gallery is going to be hung in a different manner to create more space. We hope to be able to offer educational opportunities throughout the year. We're working on that so people can come and interact with the images. And with that, these are the images that the artists received from the spirits for you. Okay.
So thank you, Mary Lou, for taking us on this journey. Thank you to all of the artists for your incredible insight, inspiration, and we will continue to ponder and work deeper into the spirit of insight and renewal that is represented in so many of these paintings, offering us both truth and the journey of reconciliation. So thank you for being here, and blessings on your journey for the rest of the day.